Welcome back, everybody. This is the Kelly Roach Show, and I am super excited to have with me here today Ashley Stahl. Hey, Ashley.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you here. You have such an interesting background. I mean, counterterrorism at the Pentagon meets TEDx for business owners and speakers to go viral. I mean, makes total sense, right?
Obviously. And when I left national security, I was working in an Obama administration. I left and I ended up becoming a career coach at 24. So obviously, I love a good career pivot. And I ended up writing a whole book about career pivots because I had so much to say about them.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's wild. So we're going to talk today for everybody listening. We're going to really dig into the world of TEDx and how this can help you gain visibility, traction, authority for your brand, what the process looks like, how to know whether or not this is right for you, and then of course, how to get in the game and get started if it's something that you feel is a match for you and your business. So Ashley, before we dig into TEDx, why don't you just share a little bit with our listeners about this journey and how you even got into this world and began doing the work that you're doing today with business owners around the TEDx strategy.
So my agency now, Wise Whisper, we've written more than 100 TEDx talks for clients, and we've placed more than 1,200 people on stage for TEDx with nearly 100% success. But obviously, I feel like this is the part of the story where, you're like, it wasn't always this way. Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in a house where the news was always on. And I, from a young age, had parents that were really into politics. One side of the family was one direction, the other was the other, and people would fight on Sundays.
Yeah.
I feel like, for better or worse, I kind of had an opinion as a kid. And it's funny that I did because I don't know if it was really like education backed. It was just a lot of people really emotional about politics at my table on Sundays. And the one thing that I did resonate with was language. Like I was always very good at foreign languages, and that kind of connected me to politics in a way because I would see the news on and think about all these different people and places. When I was a little kid, I'd learned Spanish. My mom taught me it. And then when I was in middle school, I became fluent in French. And then when I was in college, I started studying Arabic. So when 9/11 happened, I just remember very viscerally where I was standing. I feel like if you're a millennial, you remember, and I feel like in the same way COVID changed Generation Z in the middle of their college years, 9/11 changed millennials in the middle of a lot of our college years. And I just remember thinking, I need to do something about this. And so I poured myself all the way into national security. I got the degree. I did everything I could. I had all the internships, and I ended up getting to the Pentagon when Obama was the administration. And I was working on Afghanistan. I was on the path to be in the CIA. And I think what guided me to want to do that outside of my language skills was always feeling like people would want to share with me and connect with me my whole life. And I remember thinking, if people are connecting with me, I might as well help. I don't know how my brain did this. I might as well help them get Osama bin Laden over it. And so I ended up, going fully into it and realizing that I completely misunderstood my skill set. And I ended up getting a book deal later called U-Turn and writing all about core skill sets. And the message of my book, U-Turn, is this: it's don't do what you love, do what you are. And the whole book is about how do you even figure out who you are in your career. And so while I was at the Pentagon, it was the recession, and all my friends were, way better students than I was in grad school, asking me how I got a job. So I helped the whole world get job offers. I was so good at it. And they would all say, you should be a career coach. And I remember thinking, like, what does that even mean? Like, is that just me standing outside of your office cheering you on like a hockey coach? Like, what is a career coach? And I ended up going on and starting a career coaching business anyway. Obviously, I had no career to coach off of. I was in national security for 3-4 years. So from there, it wasn't no career, but it wasn't a lot. I ended up, just deciding within myself, like, okay, I'm just going to help people with job hunting because it's the thing I'm the best at. And I ended up creating online courses and doing that whole deal for 12 years. And I ended up scaling a course on how to get a job during the recession when webinars weren't really trendy. Yeah, like it was like 2014, 15, like Facebook ads hadn't popped yet. I did about $6 million in 2 months on Facebook ads. And that's a whole nother story for another day, but I sabotaged my entire business because I was only 25 and didn't know how to manage money. But I would go on and get a book deal and start my show, U-Turn podcast, which I'm so excited to have you on. And the thing that changed my life the most as a business owner was undoubtedly TEDx along the way. So when I was at the Pentagon, I got an award for my work in national security, and I met this woman at a ceremony, and she said she'd just gotten off the TEDx UN stage. And I remember looking at her saying, oh my gosh, I hope to do that someday. I hope to give a TEDx talk like you did. And she looked at me kind of like a cartoon character. She was like, I'm sure you will. And she got like, it was like almost like, ching, like a cartoon, like her tooth, like you will. And she texted me the next week. I was in Istanbul for a work assignment. I was like in the throes of working in national security. And she said, I referred you for TEDx and I think they're going to give it to you. You know, good luck. And I couldn't believe it. Like I'd never spoken on a stage in my life. I had no speaking skills, you know, like outside of just being a human that can talk. And sure enough, they emailed me and they said, hey, can you send us your speaking reel? And I was like 24. I had no speaking reel. And I went back to my hotel. It was like a bootleg motel in Istanbul. And I put the shower curtain behind me to have like a respectable backdrop. And I put my iPhone, it was like the iPhone 2. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what iPhone we had in 2013. And I just started talking. I Googled what is a speaking reel, and it was like a speaker giving a sample talk, but better. And I had nowhere near that. So I gave the worst little mini 60-second something on there ever. And by some sort of act of God, I still got this TEDx talk. And the thing about TEDx is that they're not all created equal. So people are confused on what's the difference between TED and TEDx. TED is obviously the main brand. It's largely invite only. That's why you see Bill Gates, Bezos, personalities like that on the TED stage. Sometimes you can pitch yourself and get on it, but to me, it's not really worth the time. TEDx, on the other hand, is licensed out by TED. Anybody can decide they want to host a TEDx event, but they need to get approved by the TED brand to do so. And there's 13,000 TEDx events all over the world. So the thing about those is that the amount of people in the audience is directly tied to the amount of trust the TED brand gives them as a licensor. And so Berkeley happened to have 4,000 people in the audience, which meant that it had a pretty big license from TED. It had a lot of trust from the TED brand versus other TEDx events that maybe have 100 people in the audience. They have a smaller license and less trust. They haven't been running for enough years or something like that. So it was TEDx Berkeley. I got on stage after Guy Kawasaki, and it was just a miracle that I somehow got myself together and gave this speech. Along the way, I found a couple speechwriters in the administration, and I went over to them. I'm like, look, I got this TED thing. I'm going to embarrass myself. And one of the speechwriters in the administration sat me down and said, here's how we write for the president. Here's how we structure a speech. And I was only giving a 9-minute talk, but that person changed my entire career. And I went on stage. The talk ended up going viral. And I ended up feeling this weird, confusing feeling of like, okay, I'm grateful that it did really well. And it changed my life. I filled my coaching practice, did about $1 million in revenue. Over the years of just lead generation from that one TEDx talk, but I always felt kind of sticky about it. Like, can you imagine your first time public speaking being the one thing everybody sees? So I promised myself another time I would give another talk. And my second talk in 2019, after all of my growing up and knowing how to communicate and speak, ended up going unicorn viral. And now it's in the top 100 TEDx ever. And the thing that people don't know about TEDx is that if you do well on the TEDx channel, it gets picked up by the TED channel, and then it gets put into translations. So it's the gift that keeps giving. And both channels have 40 million subscribers. So if you get into the algorithm of TEDx and you do well, you get thrown into the algorithm of TED, and then you get thrown into different countries' translations. And what's interesting about that for me personally was I ended up getting licensing deals on my online courses from the second TEDx talk. I got a $500,000 spokesperson deal, millions of dollars of revenue in consulting, 3 book deals offered to me, a speaking agent, a speaking tour, and I tripled my keynote fees. I mean, it's just nonstop what it could do. So I know you asked me forever ago about my journey, but here's the long-winded answer of why I've finally landed at the TEDx brand and the importance of it for me.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's incredible. So let me back up before we go forward, because I want to let's take it back a step. When you said that those 9 minutes of getting guidance from the speechwriter that gave you the framework on how they wrote for the president and then helped you with that initial TED talk, what were some of the tenets of that you still use in your frameworks and in your methodology today? And kind of what were the pillars of that made that so successful?
A couple of things. Like number one is, and I've just learned this with the TEDx channel about virality, right? Like the title is, this is irrelevant to the president's speech writing, but since I'm thinking about it, the title, obviously nothing's going viral if the title doesn't really work. It's very rare for content to be so good that the title doesn't matter. So you can't even open the present if people don't want to touch the present. So you need the title. But the speechwriter really taught me the importance of the opener and having a range of emotion in the story that you're sharing. So my 2019 TED Talk opens up, well, even if we go back to the one in 2013, the first words you hear me say are spying, the Pentagon, counterterrorism. This was my career path when I was 22. That's my first line of the talk. You get people's attention. So there's many different ways to get attention, right? And there's ways that kind of feel like a cheap shot. Like you can tell the craziest story of your life, right? Like you got mugged and by like thugs and God knows where. Like it's a powerful story. It can be a cheap shot, but I say cheap shot without judging you. I think it's a very smart move sometimes as a marketing person, right? So I think everybody needs to know the craziest story that's ever happened in their life. And you have to realize, and the speechwriter taught me that openers of speeches are like top hats that can be traded out. So even if you want to give a speech about why you should own a garden, why fishing is going to change your mental health, like whatever speech you want to give, I'm picking very random ones because we're writing 46 TEDx talks right now at my agency and booking 47, even more of them. So all of these varieties are on my mind, but there are top hats. Like you can open up, if you look at my 2019 TEDx talk, it opens up with my dad getting a phone call in the kitchen of somebody saying that I was kidnapped. And the talk is about how to figure out what you want out of your career. What does that have to do with being kidnapped? Well, the speechwriter taught me that the opener really can be swapped out and changed. So you first really want to ask yourself, what is the craziest story of your life? But more importantly, as we've been writing TEDx talks, I know that crazy stories go viral. They shock people, they get attention, but mostly it's also the range of emotion, like really having a range of emotion, showing joy, showing sadness, showing depth, showing connection. And not just range of emotion, but relatability. And I have written and seen clients go viral for talks that only have one of those things, right? I've seen talks where it's just the craziest story ever. It's not really relatable. It's just too wild to be relatable. I've seen ones that have a range of emotion and they're really relatable, but they're not that crazy of a story. So these are all just different factors I think about, but remembering that the opener is a top hat and you don't need to put pressure on yourself to think, I'm going to write a talk about my 5 business tips. Okay, this better be an opening that has to do with me as a business owner. You don't need to think that parallel of thinking. If you're not a good speechwriter, you're not a good writer, get a good speechwriter. And I'm not even plugging myself. Like you don't have to use us. You can use anyone that you think is a great writer to open up your talk. There's also structure. The speechwriter really taught me a lot about structure. So to close out just the topic of openers, there's a storytelling opener, and then there's more of a conversational opener. So if you think about TED Talks, you think about, or any speaking engagement, you can think about a speaker getting on stage and saying, a shocking statistic, and they kind of start conversationally, like, did you know this? And da 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 da. The problem with that opening is that it's hard to stay interesting. It's hard to keep their interest. So the shocking statistic might grab them, but then you got to keep them. That's why my firm, usually we go with a story because we're keeping people through the whole story versus the conversational approach that starts to flatline. The second piece is structure. The speechwriter taught me that, in a half hour, you really can't fit more than 3 to 4 talking points. And he called those signposts, which I know in speech writing, that's a common term, right? Like, have you used that term, Kelly, with your business coaching?
I don't use that term, but I get that because I typically, when I teach, I talk about sharing your top, 3 things, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them your 3 things, right? And then tell them what you told them. But I'm very interested to hear the TEDx strategy around that.
Yeah. And it's so funny, and I'll side note this and come back on to the focus with you, is one thing about TEDx that I'm really proud of is that I'm not affiliated with TEDx. I'm more of a digital marketing and speech writing. I've identified as a writer my whole life. And so I'm really using my gift, but I actually see the TEDx brand as highly limiting to people for certain reasons. So for example, if you have a lot of business owners or speakers or whoever listening to us right now, and they think about TEDx, they think about, well, what is my one idea worth spreading? I am so glad that I'm not affiliated with TEDx. I'm a business owner that knows how to work on TEDx stuff, because if you take a very talented person like you and you say, Kelly, what's your one idea worth spreading? That takes a big brain full of great ideas and it focuses it on one little corner of all the things they could say. I would rather ask somebody, what is the most original thinking you have on your subject matter? What is the thing you want to talk about to get more clients, to leave a legacy, to impact millions, to amplify your authority? What's the thing you want more authority on? And what are the top 2 or 3 thoughts you have about it that have really transformed people through hearing the way you think about it? Not what's your one idea worth spreading? Because here's the deal. It's a YouTube talk. YouTube owns the platform, right? TEDx is the bouncer at the door. It's YouTube owns the party house. TEDx is the bouncer at the front door. We just need to get through the front door, right? So my agency, Wise Whisper, I think the reason we've had nearly 100% success getting so many people booked on stage is because we're writing deeply moving talks. We're essentially great speechwriters who understand how to get through TEDx, how to get through the door. I think the problem is that a lot of people are writing talks that are about the one idea we're spreading. And sometimes they're so bought into that and proving that with their talk that they're not even writing content that's deeply transformative. It's just proving a point that they have. Granted, my book U-Turn was a career book back in my career coaching era of 12 years. And my one idea we're spreading was pretty powerful. It was, don't do what you love, do what you are, right? I talked about that earlier in this conversation. It was a topic about not following your passion. And it ended up becoming very trendy, like way after I started talking about it, don't follow your passion became a trendy topic. But back when I started it, it wasn't that trendy. Nobody was talking about that. So it was an idea worth spreading. So I made that worth it for me. But I don't think any business owner listening to us right now needs to really think about that.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to the speechwriter, if you stop thinking about the idea we're spreading, start thinking about crazy stories, relatable stories. I have clients in my speechwriting house who, one of them, in his intake form, we have a pretty lofty, we're pretty done for you. Like we write and book the TEDx talk in 4 Zoom calls, but we have an intake form that takes an hour. And we ask clients, give us a life timeline of the most profound experiences or moments of your life that have changed the way you think, or like big decision-making moments for you in time. How did you feel? What was going on? And people have some crazy stories. We have a guy in Europe who he had 2 car accidents and everybody died in the accident, except for him in both. And he walked away unscathed. So that's like a crazy story, right? But then I have another client who, she wrote in her intake form about being at a party. She was like, she felt pudgy in high school and like nobody liked her and kind of insecure, and totally understandable high school feelings. And the popular kid, some mean girl came up to her and said that the popular kid whose party it was wanted to talk to her. And she went to the bathroom and like got herself together. And the guy at the party, she overheard him saying she was gross, and like the humiliation. That's not like a story like walking away unscathed from 2 car accidents that people died, right? It's just deeply relatable. And I do think that has the same legs to go viral as the other story. So I don't think people need to put those pressures on themselves. And going back to my conversation with the speechwriter, it was about the signposts, right? So signposts are, like you said, they're moments, they're touch points, they're mind shifts, they're talking points. And I always tell people with TEDx, we see TED Talks that are 8 minutes to 19 minutes in length. Why would we want to memorize a 19-minute talk? That's about 6 pages times New Roman 12. It's long. I don't tell clients, I'm like, please, if you're going to channel a talk and step on stage and feel your feelings, don't do it for TEDx, like memorize your thing. So a lot of clients coming in, I'm suggesting that they do a 3 to 4 page, 9 to 12 minute talk. If you look at that, the speechwriter in Obama administration told me, well, in a 30-minute talk for him, we're not putting more than 3 to 4 points. So in a 12-minute talk, I'm thinking 2 to 3 points, tops. And if there's three, two are pretty meaty, one's light, or two are light and one's meaty. I'm thinking about structure.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening, I think that's the biggest thing that the speechwriter imparted to me was if you're, giving a 12-minute talk from a structure perspective, you probably don't want your opening story to be much more than a page. And then you want the other 2.5 pages for your talking points and just maybe a long paragraph for your conclusion. So the speechwriter helped me take something like a TED Talk and the one idea we're spreading and blah, blah, blah. And he moved me into, well, where are you really brilliant? Where do you really have things to say? And then I ended up hiring a speaking coach who had coached a lot of TED Talks, and he got me out of the idea we're spreading too, but he didn't even know he was doing that for me. I just paid attention to his coaching and realized, oh, this whole thing that everybody talks about doesn't really matter. And yeah, and now here I am in my coaching practice, my career coaching. I ended up referring a lot of clients to a booker. And I said to them, like, you need to do a TED Talk. These things are insane. Like, I've written 700 blog posts for Forbes, and they have not done 1 ounce for me and my brand and the opportunities I've created. When I think about 9 years and 700 blogs I've written, it's like the amount of hours, the amount of money I've spent on editors.
Yeah.
And then I think about 1 9-minute TED Talk bringing me $1 million of revenue. It's like, I just think the personal brand realm has gotten us really stuck on spinning our wheels on things that don't actually work. So yeah, I helped a lot of career coaching clients with this structural stuff that you're asking me about. And I was like, use however many sessions you want with me. I'm your career coach, but if you want to use a couple with your TED Talk, and I referred them to a booker, and I referred her 40 clients of my career coaching practice over 2 years. And I saw her book 39 out of 40 on stage. And that was when I started Wise Whisper Agency. And I'm biased, but I just don't think there's something you could do more to get your book going.
That's really interesting. So, how do you see your clients using their TED Talk after it's done outside of the TED platform?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it is it kind of adds this mysticism to your career because you don't really know what it's going to do. Like, first of all, my second talk, I knew it would go viral because as a speechwriter, I poured myself into it. And that's the thing about going viral. It may not be easy, but it is simple. You simply write the best talk of your life and you practice it. And so I think, not all talks go viral. I would say I'm seeing about 1 out of the 3 that we write in book are taking off. And there's not much you can do to prepare. My talk, the second one, that went viral and reached the top 100, I remember feeling like this is definitely going to go. And then for 6 months, nobody watched it, and it like died on the corner of the internet. Like, and then it took, and people always ask me, well, what happened? Did somebody share it? No, it just did what I knew it was meant to do. I knew it was meant to do it because I gave it my best. So I think if anybody's going to do this, obviously you don't need to hire a company like mine to do it. You can go do it. It's tedious. If you're a natural born writer, do it. Get a co-writer to help you with your blind spots. Getting booked is tedious, but if you have the team that can put all those tens of hours into getting you booked, fine. But you need to practice it. And I think that's the thing is I tell clients, like, we're done for you. You show up for 4 Zoom calls, we write it and book it for you, but we can't memorize it for you. And that's where a lot of clients, like, I tell them, you really need to respect this platform or it's never going to go viral if you don't give it that energy.
The energy. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, I mean, you guys write it and book it in the 4 Zoom calls. And then what is like the process and the timeline? Like if someone's listening to the show today and they're like, yeah, maybe this is something I want to put, on my goals for next year or whatever the case, like what should someone expect to end from a process and timeline standpoint?
Yeah. And I mean, I have so much more. You asked me such a good question about the president's speechwriter and more thoughts about that. But as far as how we work, we write the whole talk in 4 Zoom calls. We have an intake form. We pull all the information out of you over those 4 90-minute Zoom calls. We have our speech writing team, our creative director. I'm in and out. I'm always behind the scenes with them in the writing because that's where I think I'm the best. And these meetings with our clients are touch points to make sure we write it. And clients always say, oh, we want it in our voice. And I'm like, well, I kind of want it better than in your voice. Like we want it better than we want your best you. So after the 2 months of speech writing, we hand it off to the booking team. We provide you your PowerPoints. slides and your graphic design. We provide you your bio, your SEO optimized title suggestions. And then from there, the booking team does what they do and you really don't hear from us. The fastest we've ever booked somebody is 6 weeks after we finish writing their talk. An event said yes to us. And even if you get a yes, the events still run 2 to 4 months out. So you have plenty of time to memorize your talk and prepare. The slowest we've seen is 14 months. And, it took 14 months to get a yes for someone. And of the 40 clients that I referred to the booker, back when I had my career coaching practice and she booked 39, the one she couldn't book had a very thick Italian accent. And the curator said, we can't understand her communication. And so to me, that felt like, wow, we're batting 100. So it's slow, but for us, it's really not a matter of if somebody's getting booked. It's just a matter of when. And we just do a pretty good job screening people. Like we don't take on clients we can't book. So I would say if it's something you want to do in your brand in the next year and a half or so, or in the next couple of years, you should get started now. I don't want to sound salesy saying that, but like we're always running a couple months out with our speechwriters because the talent that I've needed to have, our top speechwriter comes from my AP English class in 9th grade. She would stand up and share her poetry and I would always cry in the back of the class because I've always been a little writer kid. And so it's really hard to find the kind of people that I'm seeking for this sort of writing. So we're always running a few months out. But if somebody is wanting to do this on their own and they don't want to work with us, I would say, obviously write your speech on your own timeline, but know this, it's kind of a chicken or egg thing. Like TEDx curators that get your pitch, if you're shopping yourself around to be on a TEDx stage, why would they book you if they don't know what you have to say? Like you're just another name in a sea of names, even if you have a brand. So having a partially drafted speech makes them have an idea of where this is going. So it's like, well, why would an entrepreneur write a speech they don't have booked? Well, why would TEDx book you if they don't know what you're going to say? So
that makes sense.
If you're going to do it on your own, have something started and think about the structure that I talked about, the opening story, the 3 talking points.
That's great. Now, you talked about the difference between the TED platform, the parent company, and then TEDx. And obviously there's TEDx locations all over the place. How does it work in terms of like which location and where you're actually going to be presenting and that placement?
So in our contract, we ask, do you have any unavailable dates? Do you have like weddings or stuff that you want us to black out and not book you over the next 12 to 18 months? But we also ask you how far you're willing to go. And we have everywhere. I actually have been finding, I don't know what it is about our team, but we've been finding it's pretty speedy to get people booked in Europe right now for ourselves. And I don't think that has anything to do with Europe being easier to book. I just think maybe our speeches are resonating. I don't know. But I would say, we ask, how far are you willing to go? We have a very well-known, we have clients from all over, right? Like medical professionals, New York Times bestselling authors, activists, everyday humans. But one person we have that came in, he got banned from YouTube for being anti-vax. And I'm politically agnostic, especially after working in national security long enough. It's like, the more I learn, the less I feel like I know about anything with politics. I guess that's what security clearances will do for you, is make you see a lot of information and realize you didn't know anything. But I think, for that client in particular, we were like, okay, let's not book you in the United States. You already pissed off the United States, by getting your YouTube taken down. So let's put you. So we booked him in Asia. So we can book people anywhere. And if people are willing to go anywhere, I think it expedites the process for sure.
And so is that a different pitching process? Are you pitching to different people in different locations? Or are you pitching to the TEDx organization and then different entities are looking at it? Like if someone's doing this, are they pitching to all different entities in all different locations, or how does that work?
We don't pitch to anybody like that's an official TEDx employee or anything like that. Each of these TEDx events are run by volunteers, right? Like they're not paid to run these. And that's what's so weird, that is the TEDx brand is this funny juxtaposition of highly seasoned speakers up against students that are figuring out how to set up an audio clip for their TEDx event, you know? So it's like the most important talk for people. And then it's juxtaposed alongside people who, and that's why we never book anybody for TEDx events that it's their first time running. We want our clients to be showing up to events that have at least run once, so that they're not in a dry run. They're not a guinea pig. And that's something to really think about if you're pitching yourself. But really target the TEDx curators. I would say 50% of the speeches we book are just because we have a really good network of, you know, speech writers who, and you know, bookers and curators over at the TEDx events that trust our speeches and like what we're doing. You have to remember, it's marketing for them. My 2019 TEDx talk was at a tiny university in the Netherlands. And that's the thing, a lot of entrepreneurs, high achievers come in and they're like, well, I need to get on the best TEDx stage. I'm like, the consumer doesn't care if it's TEDx Chicago or TEDx Timbuktu. This is
right.
So, you know, I went to a small university in the Netherlands and, you know, Simon Sinek, there's a lot of other big TED Talks from small, you know, places.
Yeah.
The university told me they saw a surge in enrollments from my talk because they tacitly got exposure. So it's funny because there's like all these little things that happen that are, you know, beneficial for the small TEDx events. So we don't want to forget the value of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it really doesn't matter what location you're in. You want to be in an established one that has their stuff together and it's not their first one trying to like piece it together. But ultimately, it's really whether or not the talk takes off once it's live on the platform.
Exactly. And they have a mind of their own, but I do deeply believe that if you write the best talk you've ever written, if you feel deeply moved, that's the thing. Like we live in a world where so many people have so many parts of themselves and they want to be relevant, right? The thing about what we forget is that what makes you relevant, what makes you get a lot of followers or have a lot of impact and leave a legacy and amplify authority and all these things is deep resonance.
Yeah.
That's what makes people follow you. And the thing is that in order to resonate with other people, you need to deeply resonate with yourself. Like how many times have you written or shared something that you deeply feel? And that's the thing that gets people.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
just math,
Totally. Yeah,
you know?
totally get that. Totally get that. Now, in the agency that you run, are you solely focused on placement for like writing and placement for TEDx, or are you then partnering with these same people to then focus on booking, speaking engagements and that type of thing? Like where does it go from there?
Yeah, we've kept TEDx to be our bread and butter. I've like realized that this one thing, I just read the One Thing book and like it just
I love the One Thing. I've read it like 5 times.
I love that one. I just read 10x is greater than 2x too. And I'm like, it's such a 10x move to be the best at one thing. It's just a 10x move. Like everybody's going to go to you for that thing. We've been booked with a wait list. And this is not just with people coming in for, you know, work with us. It's been people who have paid us are waiting for their start date. And so for me, I think it's this one thing thinking. The thing we have considered is a lot of clients are like, wow, can you upgrade this TEDx into a keynote and just take this and make it into 40 minutes? We've offered that to some select clients because I did really well with webinars and online marketing forever ago. We have a couple clients that will ask one-offs and we do it on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
We do have a few tiers, right? Like tier 1 is just writing and booking your talk with us. Tier 2 is writing, booking it, and having a speaking coach with us. Tier 3 is, you know, all of the above plus a keynote upgrade. So we have little things we're doing, but we're keeping
that the core focus. Yeah. No, I love it. Fascinating stuff. And I mean, I have to think going through that process for so many people that they become better speakers. It builds their confidence for going out and pursuing stages beyond and opens up many other avenues. I guess last question, and then I want to share where people can connect with you and learn more about your services and your agency and everything. But what do you see in terms of the interconnectivity between people completing their TED Talk and then using that to get an agent or a publisher from the standpoint of a book?
I would say about half of our clients are just wanting to come in. Here's the thing. It's not time sensitive, right? Like you're going to get booked when you're going to get booked. So
Yeah.
I always tell clients, like, if your pub date is your pub date, or you already have a book deal, your publisher is going to love that this exists and that this is happening. It helps. I get consistent book sales, podcast listeners, etc. from my TED Talk. And a lot of that, by the way, for everybody listening, comes down to your bio beneath the YouTube clip, because the first 80 words are what people see. And TEDx, the thing people come to us for, especially medical professionals, they have a lot of guidelines, right? They consider new science pseudoscience. It's not widely accepted science. So we get a doctor that comes in with a lot of research. It's like, we might have to toss it and do something else. They have a lot of guidelines around self-promotion. So a lot of things that we have to walk carefully. But the YouTube clip beneath that bio section, the first 80 words before it says read more, which obviously nobody clicks the words read more. They're busy watching the TED Talk. That's where you can shamelessly promote yourself. So if you want more book listeners, if you eventually want a book deal, but you don't have one yet, you can put the words forthcoming author, because chances are the TEDx channel is not going to let you change your bio in 5 years, but in 5 years, that book will finally be out and people will see in their peripheral vision forthcoming author, and they'll Google your book if you have the book. So there's things you can do to set yourself up strategically for that. But kind of going back to just, the benefits of that, I think that TEDx has created a mysticism in my career that I never thought was possible, because we're all in our masculine energy, which is not a bad thing. I think an evolved soul has both energies, masculine, feminine. But in our business, we pursue a lot, we push a lot, we create a lot. And what we miss when we're doing that is how much energy it takes to create one opportunity after another. You pay the publicist, you do the TV interviews, you pay the social media, there's so much doing. And the thing that TEDx has given me is being, because I put it out there. It's a one and done investment brand asset. And it's not about the day it came out. It's about every single day people are seeing it and they're thinking about things. They're looking at my brilliance that I worked so hard to show correctly, right? And they're thinking about opportunities for me that I would have never thought about for myself. And so I got my speaking agent through that. I got a 4-year spokesperson deal for that. And, ended up going on a speaking tour through that. I ended up getting corporate deals through that. So I think if you want to amplify, your authority, like I keep saying, or really have a legacy, impact millions, create exponential skyrocket lead gen, obviously not all talks go viral, but I think I couldn't think of something more worth throwing your ring in your hat in the arena for. And I don't think you need to be the best speaker ever. I think you need to be the most committed speaker. Like you need to be very committed to the draft and the practice and how you show up for the commitment.
Kind of like anything that is valuable in your life, right? You have to commit. No, super powerful. I love it. Thank you so much for the breakdown, for all the tips and the strategies, and giving people kind of a masterclass on what TEDx is all about and how to know whether or not this is something for them. Now, for everybody listening, Ashley, where do they go? How do they connect? How do they learn more about your agency? All the good stuff.
Thank you for all the questions. I feel like TEDx is so rich with guidelines and ways to succeed. It's like you're getting me thinking. I could probably talk about this forever. My company is wisewhisperagency.com. And as far as getting in touch with me, I'm on Instagram at Ashley Stahl. Would love to hear from you. And obviously, if you've heard this episode and you're interested, I would love to give you $1,000 off. Just let me know you found me through Kelly. And I'll make sure my team knows to keep that $1,000 off within at least 2 months of this episode airing. So if you reach out within a couple months of it, make sure you say you're from Kelly and you'll get that.
That's awesome. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the show today and everything that you shared.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, I hope this got you inspired, excited, and ready to take action. Thank you so much for listening to the show. And remember, we're completely commercial free. And how we say commercial free is you helping us spread the word and share this episode with other entrepreneurs that it can make a meaningful difference for. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here in just a couple of days on the Kelly Roach Show.